you're the one that gets a lot of people better than we do. If you get it, then I would have two of them probably.
Now, there's no place in the meeting to review. Public, they can review this on it's not a presentation.
I didn't think it was really part of the packet or the agenda.
I didn't want to say it that way.
You asked for it.
We will get started with our August 12th Salina City Commission meeting. Call the meeting to order and roll call, please.
Mayor Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hay.
Here.
Commissioner Hodges. Commissioner Hoppick.
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have no awards and proclamations, so we will proceed directly to Citizens Forum. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the commission about any item not on the agenda, and we simply ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon. Joan Ratzlaff, Salina. I was watching a video of one of the recent meetings, and there was a gentleman was talking about our manufactured potholes, our recent paving, which, of course, we're always glad to see that, including on my street, because it was getting pretty bad. Commissioner Hodges, who's not here, she was asking him for particulars about where they are, that she might follow up. And I got to thinking about this. If we have a standard, not more than 5/8 or whatever it is off, and our paving creates a situation where it's not to standard anymore, isn't that something that should be part of oversight of that project? And so I got to thinking that there's a lot of manufactured potholes I see. And I'm not in a position to go and, I'm not looking at the streets. That's not my job. I'm driving on them. I'm paying my taxes. But say at the intersection of Roach and Republic, there's 3 like in the middle of that intersection. There's some on my street that weren't there before they paved. And, things like that all over town. And I just think, isn't that something that when that project is being done, that should be part of the oversight to make sure that it's to standard, instead of putting it on individual citizens where it's less likely to get attention that it should have? Which brings me to my concern about the budget cuts to departments. When we have a situation where we don't have adequate staff, or whatever the reason might be, which I'm assuming that's it, to provide oversight for the projects that our taxpayer funds are going for, I'm concerned that I'm concerned about our financial situation with cutting budgets and reducing services instead of the other way around. So.
Go
Well, kind of along with that, the paving projects, there are other things where we've got code violations, and I understand, or I've been told, that code violations like tall grass or tree limbs hanging where they shouldn't in the right-of-way, things like that, peeling paint, broken sidewalks, all those things are only addressed when a complaint comes to our city department. And again, when people come to visit our town and say, oh, this looks dilapidated, or what's the matter with people here that they can't take care of their properties, it makes me think that maybe it would be appropriate for us to look at having a more proactive program for addressing code violations. Because I want my town to be attractive to visitors and newcomers and to those of us who live here all the time. That's all I got to say.
3 very good points.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I can try to respond to some of those. We have dedicated staff for code violations that proactively go do thousands of inspections a year. We do definitely respond to complaints that are received, but that's not the only basis of our code enforcement efforts. With respect to budget cuts and impacting staff oversight of street projects, we don't have reduced staff because of budget cuts. We do have hiring challenges at certain wage rates and certain positions based on our starting pay rates and just kind of our competition in the private sector or the employment market. But there's no correlation between budget cuts and potholes as relates to streets. We do have standards that we impose as part of the project itself. You may recall that we had a commission information memorandum trying to speak to this topic specifically, and we tried to do some proactive initiation of different types of risers. It's really a function of getting the manhole riser in place to get the manhole lid similar in elevation to the new pavement. We've tried 2 different approaches, and admittedly, we've had our challenges with those that have contributed to it. We're now kind of back to a more traditional approach of trying to incorporate that into the project with the same contractor rather than break it out. I would tell you that we do have a standard in terms of a tolerable elevation difference, and it is not 0. It is not completely smooth. So as you drive over a manhole surface, what may be acceptable to us and in terms of traffic design standards may be perceptible as you drive across it. That doesn't mean that, a teeth jarring, rim jarring difference is acceptable, but there is an acceptable tolerance there. So,
Off the top of your head, over what time period did we break up the paving and the?
I think that was about 2 years ago that we tried to isolate the elevation work, thinking we could get a better product, and what we found is we had timing delays that just kind of highlighted that difference. And then this most recent construction cycle, we tried to look at a riser that was adjustable. We saw it used in other communities successfully, but I don't know if it was just the tolerance that we were trying to accomplish, or there was such a minimal difference to begin with that the risers didn't work for us. But we found that that really wasn't acceptable. It didn't perform the way that we wanted. So we're back to a more proactive, more direct approach of incorporating it into future projects.
Thank you. Any other, thanks for bringing those up. Any other?
James Bowden, 1111 East Iron. I just wanted to express some displeasure with the removal of the trees on 9th Street, not only because of the removal of the shade, but mostly because of the removal of significant Salina historical landmarks. Some of the Osage orange trees north of Crawford were original boundary markers for some of the founding properties here in Salina, and I just thought they deserved recognition for their historical significance within this community. So, thank you.
Thank you. That sounds like some homework that would have been hard to do, but somebody need to pay me a little attention to it ahead of time. So those trees were here roughly how long?
Probably late 1800s.
Late 1800s. Wow. Thank you.
And condolences to the trees. So, I visited the study session today.
Give the
Oh,
clerk your
Patrick
name, sir.
Harrington, 606 Washington in Salina. I visited study session today, and I was very happy to see HUD and their development plans that they're considering. I also wanted to mention something else. In the Live Salina study of 2015, one of the bullet points was establishment of a land bank. City of Salina did so in December of 2017. The ordinance number 17-10915. Several of the reasons for doing this was to allow the city to reclaim or to place properties that perhaps had been seized because of negligence or because of abandonment, or nuisance properties. Also, a lot of properties I see are reclaimed by or seized by the city because taxes aren't paid. And I know that there's a bunch of them, though I don't know how many, I don't know exactly where they all are. But I wanted to just add a couple of bullet points for this. I've requested reports, as the ordinance describes. You must file a report by January 31st of each year. So now, with this established in 2017 in December, January would have been the first report, and January 31st of 2019 would have been the second report. Those reports I can't find in any public document in any search that I've done within the city archives. Also, the process of land bank would require that you begin by, I think, filing those reports, of which there may be nothing in the land bank. But the second step would be the appointing of an advisory board for consideration of properties that may be held by the city of Salina, to consider those for deposit in or ownership by the land bank. I know you had a tough decision last week about our taxes, and they've been raised, and you can't be completely happy about that, but you have to establish a budget and you have to make it make it work. But I think the establishment of the land bank would help the city gain some revenue, returning some money to the city of where they currently don't have any. One of the things I always like to do when I had a budget was that there's two ways to manage it, and one is to create more revenue. The other is to raise the taxes. So here's an opportunity, I think, that's already in place to create more revenue for the city. I don't know how many properties are here, but I'm assuming there's over 100. And I've requested that information through the Open Records Act, though it appears that the city ordinance for the land bank doesn't require an open records request. It says that these documents of inventory and transactions will be available at any time for inspection by the public, at any time. So those have been requested. Would just kind of like to add something else to that, and that's I've done a lot of research on land banks as a result of this, and I think they're fantastic, and I think it would be a great gesture by the city of Salina, or city of Salina, to make some of these properties available to citizens that can come in, maybe claim a lot, build something, or that can claim a house that's perhaps has been condemned or simply boarded up because it's been abandoned. And this in Kansas City in 2017 had a sale for homes for $999. There's a great way to give people an opportunity, and especially on the north side where we typically don't make special assessments and establishments, but also the north side where it needs to be enhanced and it needs to be developed, and there's a lot of infill and there's a lot of houses that may be there that just aren't up to code or up to snuff. You give the opportunity to people to come in and take a house and to pick something and buy it and fix it up themselves and make the codes and reestablish and pride of ownership for them. Of course, it's economic development also for anybody that's got anything to build, permits and materials and things that they're going to need to do this building, as well as the enhancement of the tax rolls that come back to the city. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to take these properties off of the city ledger that the city has to maintain and give it back to the public, and give them somebody who maybe doesn't own a home an opportunity to do this. Just to polish my own nails here, there's a vacant piece of property at the end of my block, and The rule of kind of the yard is that the better their yard looks, the better mine can look. And I've been mowing this property for 4 months. The city hasn't touched it, and it's owned by the city. Recently, city came in and cleaned up some deadfall that was there. I kept it there because it creates a natural environment for, I think, for animals and bees and birds and flowers, and I planted wildflowers there. City guys didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't tell them. I just continued to do it because it was my way to do something on my block that helped all of our lots look better. So this is a lot, somebody's died, and the city has taken ownership up, and it could be put into the land bank and allowed somebody to come and maybe make an investment there. So step one is produce a report, I guess. Step 2 would be for you're the governing board of this ordinance, establish an advisory board, 5 to 9 people that have property or live in the city of Salina, to start dealing with these properties. And in the urgency of time and budget and all those things, I'd love to see the city make some money on something that they're just sitting around and on the city ledgers, and that the city has to maintain and mow. And I'd be happy to take care of my block, the property that's vacant there. But it's was an interesting thing. The ordinance, again, 17-10915, and we're already deficient in 2 reports that would be accomplished on January 31st. So if there's nothing in the land bank, then the report should be easy to create, 0. And then ongoing, there's the establishment of a board of advisory by this board to go on. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Or I was going to say, unless the city manager has answers right away, it might be advisable to give some formal information in the next week or two.
I do have a question, and I think I can answer. Do you know the address of the vacant lot that you're maintaining?
No. Mine is 606. I have a neighbor, and then it's a corner lot. It's vacant.
Okay.
I know that several owners have died. The previous owner has died, and that property is just sitting there. And I just felt it didn't look that great, and I mowed it and preserving a natural state. I wasn't going to chip the wood, but the wood will degrade and go back into the earth as it should. I thought it looks great, better that way, and I mowed a path around the outside of it so people could walk, and people walk their dogs there. It was a nice place. I guess because of your question, the HUD report that was done today, I liked the things that they say, the things that they want to do. I thought that was great. One of the things I want to advocate for is that properties and developments need to include green belt. They need to include space where maybe a communal garden. Community garden's a different concept. Communal garden's one where perhaps all the people that live in that area, or the ones that want to, can do some work in that space. You can have wildflowers. It's just as nice to walk through a place that's been cared for and is native to our area as it is to go to a park. And the splash park and the tot, they talked about the tot corral, tot spot, I think, tot lot. I thought that was great. More greenbelt is a good thing for humans. It's a good thing for us to enjoy. It's a healthy thing. So,
the answer I was going to provide is Mr. Harrington's correct. There is no land in the land bank, and the report doesn't exist. We'll get him a formal response to the open records request, but we've been advised that with no property in the land bank, a report isn't necessarily required, but we will, going forward, produce a report that indicates there's nothing to report.
as supporting information for you and for me, I also requested by open records the number of properties that the city holds currently and why they were acquired by the city, nuisance or abandonment or whatever. The tax is, it seems to be a really common one on really weird shaped properties or something that you really can't build any on, but I know of 2 owners that have returned property to the city by not paying the taxes. And the city seizes that property, and it may be an easement that really isn't that useful, except for maybe something like a green belt or something like a garden, something that really enhances our neighborhoods. So,
So we can
Thank you.
coordinate with you to amend your open
I'd love
records
it.
request,
Yeah,
but
I'd love it.
but
Yeah.
we'll need you to provide that in writing.
Okay?
we
It
appreciate-
has been already.
I also did send Mr. Harrington today the last PowerPoint that we did with you guys for the study session on policies and procedures. So your question about forming a citizen advisory board and how we get properties and how we would acquire them, things like that, kind of gives you a rundown on that. So I'd be happy to get together with you and talk a little bit about that process.
We love it, yeah.
I think the other thing is there are some very distinct qualifications for a land bank on how properties are acquired, particularly those that deal with foreclosure issues. There's no kind of automatic. It's not like once a property has foreclosure issues, it just automatically goes into the land bank. We're not a joint municipality like Wyandotte County is. So there has to be a very conscious choice. That's why we talked about your policies and procedures of, is this in the right area? Is it the right type of property? Does it fit these kind of criteria? And so that the board can make a decision that's best use for the city. But there's no automatic,
The city must.
Moving
your
into the
board
land bank.
must accept, it could be by gift or it could be by seizure. You can also deny that something goes to the land bank because of some condition, as she said. I also see a potential there to go to HUD with some properties they'd love to buy. What I really would feel badly about is that somebody who owns other property, specifically rental property, could buy a property and end up with a rental. I think it's important that the citizens of Salina enjoy that opportunity. And Kansas City had, I think it was 10,000 properties, and they marked 50 of them for $999. So,
And that would probably occur more often here because those properties are available for sale before the city would get to them anyway.
yeah. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of August 5th, 2019. And item 6.2, authorize the purchase of 4 remote telemetry units and telemetry modifications for the water system from R.E. Pedrati Company Incorporated from Mission, Kansas, in the amount of $123,965.
Okay, there are 2 items on the consent agenda. Is there any item that the commissioner would like to pull?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Administration, 7.1.
Item 7.1, adopt 2020 budget and related items. 7.1A, second reading ordinance number 19-11013, adopting and appropriating the 2020 annual budget. 7.1B, resolution number 19-7726, adopting the position classification and salary schedule for city employees for 2020. And item 7.1C, resolution number 19-7727, adopting the 2020 comprehensive fee schedule for the city of Salina, Kansas.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Back on August the 5th, we held a public hearing on the 2020 budget as well as passing on first reading ordinance 19-11013, which adopted and appropriated the 2020 annual budget. The 2020 position classification and salary schedules have been adjusted to include, as you directed, a 2.0% pay adjustment or cost of living increase effective January 1st, 2020. This increase will result in about $640,000 in additional salary costs over all funds for the government. Approximately $510,000 of that will impact the general fund. The comprehensive fee schedule as proposed increases the fees 2 to 3%. In some cases, there may be larger or slightly lower decreases just as cost of living, and also to result in a round number for ease of administration. These increases will take effect January 1st, 2020 for all fees except the EMS fees, which are proposed to be implemented on September 1st, 2019 in order to capture additional allowable rates by insurance companies. Fees that are set by statute, fines for municipal court, and most parks and recreation fees are not impacted by the proposed updates. Adjustments to the water and wastewater and golf course rates will be deferred until later in the year. The 2020 annual budget provides the plan and authorization of resources for the operation of the city services and was formulated with the proposed salary and fee adjustments in mind. It conforms with our strategic plan by providing the highest quality of services consistent with governing body direction, available resources, and staff commitment to quality. In this item, we have 3 action items, separate action items that we need to address. The first one is ordinance 19-11013. Staff has 3 options. You can approve this on second reading, appropriating the 2020 annual budget. You can postpone consideration of the second reading of the ordinance to a specific date and time. Just be aware that the certified budget must be to the county clerk no later than August 25th. Or do not approve on second reading ordinance 19-11013, resulting in a budget violation to the city. Do you want to go through one at a time, or you want me to give you all your options at once?
I'd just as soon go through them all, all at once, but I'll
That's fine. Comfortable.
defer to the majority opinion.
do it.
Okay.
Resolution 19-7726, adopting the position classification salary schedule. We've provided 4 options. You can approve that resolution as presented. You can approve the resolution, providing us with any amendments that you choose. You can postpone consideration to a specific date and time, or you cannot approve that, which would affect the expenditures included in the 2020 budget. And for Resolution 19-7727, which is adopting the comprehensive fee schedule, you have the same 4 options. Staff recommends option 1 in all 3 of these action items. And I would stand for questions or comments.
Any questions or comments?
I just got one. When did we decide to wait and defer the golf course fees until later next year?
Golf course fees are set with Parks and Recreation fees in their cost recovery scheme, so those typically are not included in the comprehensive fee schedule.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, we talked about, there was nothing to talk about deferring until a later date. I guess that was.
My last recollection is we reported out our fees compared to other municipal golf courses and kind of our fee history, and I thought we came to a conclusion that we were probably in line, but typically we'll have an effective date of January 1 just to provide advance notice. If we need to revisit that fee in particular, we could do that between now and the 1st. While we're talking about fees, you may recall that we had conversations about the River Festival pre-sale and day of pricing. So the fee schedule includes that proposed increase, and then at your direction, Arts and Humanities staff has looked at packaging options and other structural options, and right now we have a study session scheduled for August 26th for them to report out. So this may turn into a 2-step process. This would authorize that fee increase, and then depending on the feedback you provide at the study session, there may be a follow-up on terms of packaging and some of those other details.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, any action be taken on item 7.1A?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve on second reading ordinance number 19-11013, adopting and appropriating the 2020 annual budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt and appropriate the 2020 annual budget. Any further questions, concerns? Have vote by roll call.
Commissioner Hay,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Any action on item 7.1B?
Mayor Davis, I move we approve Resolution 19-7726, adopting the position, classification, and salary schedule for city employees for 2020.
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to adopt the position, classification, and salary schedule for city employees for 2020. All in favor? I'm sorry. This is not by second reading, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And any action on item 7.1C?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 197727, adopting the 2020 comprehensive fee schedule for the city of Salina, Kansas.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt the 2020 comprehensive fee schedule for the city of Salina, Kansas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And thank you to all the department heads and city manager and deputy city manager who have wrangled over this, but we're in, I think, a very good position to have the next several years' budget process be a lot smoother and effective. Let's move to 7.2.
Item 7.2, authorize the relocation of overhead power to underground power at 2 well sites located at the South Well Field.
Ms. Tasker.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The South Wellfield and Water Treatment Plant project includes replacing and rehabilitating existing wells. And 2 of those wells, wells number 102 and 104, are located along Waterwell Road, and they have Westar overhead power lines that go directly over the top of the well site. In order to remove and replace a pump, service truck with a tower mast is utilized, and it's raised to a vertical position, which basically conflicts with the overhead power lines. I provided you a photo in your packet that kind of gives you an idea of what that might look like. And the truck's mast is at a height such that it really conflicts with those overhead power lines. This is truly an extremely dangerous condition, so removing and replacing the pumps with those overhead power lines in place is just not a recommended practice. A temporary reroute of the overhead power line around the well site was discussed with Westar staff, and it was determined that it would cost about $25,000 per well site, or a total of $50,000 for that. And I believe we did this about 10 years ago to do some testing at one of the pumps. Looking back, that was probably not the best idea. We maybe should have had a better option. So this time we're going to try to correct that. And what we looked at was an option to use underground power at the pump station site and in between 2 poles on each side of the lift station, or the pump station for the well. And what we found in discussing it with Westar, that this cost would be $19,188 for well 102 and $15,891 at well 104. This cost does not include installing a 4-inch conduit between the power poles. Westar does have 3 contractors that they allow to do this work, and we solicited quotes from those 3 contractors. 2 provided quotes. The most cost-effective quote was from Precision Electrical Contractors, LLC, at $5,582 for well 102 and $6,332 for well 104. In your photo selection there, the photo at the bottom of the page shows you some trees have overgrown well number 104, and which would make it difficult to reroute our conduit and do any work at the well site in the future. We contacted Parks and Recreation staff to see if they had the availability to do the tree removal for us. And they went out and looked at the site and determined that they don't have the equipment, the manpower, nor the certification to work near the overhead power lines. And they recommended Salina Tree Incorporated to do that work. So we received a quote from Salina Tree Incorporated in the amount of $2,400 to remove the trees at well 104. So kind of in summary, at well number 102, Westar line work is $19,188. Precision Electric underground conduit is $5,582, or a total of $24,770, which you'll notice is less than the $25,000 to temporarily reroute it. And well number 104, Westar's work is $15,891, underground conduit, $6,332, tree removal, $2,400, $24,623. Again, less than $25,000. So feel like we have a good alternative of a permanent solution with underground power that we will not have to do anything in the future. This project kind of moved along a little quicker than we anticipated. Our contractor on site kind of has some availability of the well contractor to do some work now, so they, I'd say, moved this up a few months on us, so we've been working pretty drastically hard to get these numbers pulled together to try to help them continue with some availability of a well contractor. So they worked with Westar, and we're on their list to get the work done, and the others we've also talked with. So in general, the project cost is $49,393. We intend to pay for that with the unused budget in our 2019 capital improvement program under system enhancements. We have a $2 million budget there, and we do multiple projects out of that budget. Typically, in the past years, we've always had some unused funds. This year, I believe we'll have some unused funds. We have a sewer improvement project that we have designed and sitting on the desk. We haven't advertised it and put it out for bid. We have some concerns with enough staff to oversee it properly in line with all of the subdivision projects that are being proposed right at this time. We'd like to have enough staff to oversee a project, make sure it's done appropriately. So I think we have at least one project that we have the ability to rearrange or manage it to make sure that we have the $50,000 to do this project. So I believe we have the ability to monitor and make sure we stay within our $2 million budget at the end of the project. And so staff has identified two options for the City Commission. Option one is authorize the relocation of overhead power to underground power at 2 well sites located at the South Well Field in the amount of $49,393. Or option two is deny relocation of the overhead power to underground power and give staff further direction. Staff recommends option one. I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have on this.
Questions? None? Thank you, Mrs. Tasker. Any questions or comments from the public? Must be a nice feeling to be the smartest one in the room. No one has any questions. Okay. You bring this back to the commission for action.
Mr. Mayor, I move we authorize the relocation of overhead power to the underground power at 2 well sites located at the South Well Field in the amount of $49,393.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize $49,393 to relocate overhead power to underground power at the 2 well sites at the South Well Field. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And we can move to 7.3.
Item 7.3, first reading ordinance number 19-11012, levying special assessments against certain lots and pieces of property to pay the cost of abatements of nuisances.
Welcome back.
Thank you again. Throughout the year, notices are sent to property owners notifying them that they have violations of city codes pertaining to property maintenance. The property maintenance code is found under Salina Municipal Code, Chapter 31, and this process includes many steps. The first step is the code enforcement officer investigates and confirms that there's a violation, whether that's through our own inspection or through somebody reporting that. If that's confirmed, a notice is sent to the deed owner via certified mail, and also to, if we know it's a rental property, it's also sent to the tenant via regular mail. This notice itemizes the violation, related code sections, and the action that's necessary for them to abate the violation, and the date by which they must do so. The notice also informs the property owner of their due process so that they can determine whether they need an extension or if and a right to file an appeal against that. The notice informs the property owner that if they take no action, the deadline has set, that the city has the authority to order an abatement, and the property owner is going to be responsible for the costs. The next step is that the code enforcement officer waits till the deadline passes, and then he goes out for a follow-up inspection to see if the violation has been abated or if it still exists. If the violation does still exist, then he would go through and proceed with an order of abatement with the contractors that we have set up. Once the contractor completes the abatement, a bill is sent to the city, and we send a notice to the property owner again stating what those costs are and informs the owner that they have 30 days to pay those costs, and that if they do not pay them, the costs will be added to their taxes as a special assessment. State statute provides that if cost of such removal and abatement notice is not paid within 30 days, the cost is collected in the manner of KSA 121115 and any amendments, and it's assessed to the property as a tax would be assessed. The cost is assessed, and the city clerk certifies this to the county by August 25th of each year. And then at that point is put on the tax roll, and the property owner gets that statement in the mail from the city clerk. Ordinance 19-11012 details the abatement amounts remaining due by individual tract and levies and assessment against the subject properties. The fiscal impact is that the total amount that was billed was $80,101.71, of which $16,400.87 has been paid, which leaves a remaining amount to be assessed against properties of $63,700.84. This covers all abatements that were finalized since we did the 2018 certification. Staff has identified the following options for commission consideration. Approve ordinance 19-11012, levying special assessments against these properties. Postpone consideration of this ordinance to a specified date and time and provide further direction for staff. Approve the ordinance on first reading and provide direction regarding additional information or amendments that the city commission would like to request for their further consideration at the time of the second reading, or vote to deny the ordinance and denying levying special assessments against certain lots. You can stand for any questions or comments at this time.
Commissioner Hoppus, any questions on this one? And should we know, these are for services already performed by the city?
Yes, or our contractors.
Or contractor.
Yes.
Is there some type of administrative fee added to these how do we
Yes.
assess those by?
Yes, an administrative fee of $150 is added to, for instance, we'll go out and perform services and somebody will call and say, well, I already mowed it. I mean, the fact that we had to go out there and after your first abatement issue, you've been notified. And if it keeps reoccurring, we don't notify you every time because it says in the first notice, you've been told if this keeps happening, we'll have to go back out there. So some administration fees are incurred with that too. Am I missing anything?
No, it's not only the staff time, but the certified mail process and all the documentation that leads up to
I was
getting
hoping
someone
we
on
did,
notice.
besides
and-
just charging for the
Right.
for the service itself because of the time involved by staff. So thank you.
Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, we will move or see if there's any action.
Mayor Davis, I move we approve ordinance number 19-11012, levying spatial assessments against certain lots and pieces of property to pay the cost of abatement of nuisances.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to, and this is on first reading, to approve ordinance number 19-11012. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes on first reading 4-0. And this will come back a week from now for the second
Yes.
reading. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I meant to say that.
Item 7.4.
Item 7.4, first reading ordinance number 19-11011, authorizing the issuance and delivery of water and sewer system revenue refunding bonds.
Promise this is the last time I'm coming up here, with my own item anyway. We've been talking about this refunding for quite a while now, and as you recall, with our financial advisors, when we determine that we can have some savings in interest payments over a certain period of time for bonds, we'll usually take advantage of that process. We can do this with callable bonds, which means that we can pay them before they're due without penalty. On June 22nd, Resolution 197714 was adopted, authorizing us to take those refunding bonds for sale. The city held a rating call with Moody's on July 25th, 2019, and the rating for these revenue bonds was confirmed at AA3, which is the rating that we've had with our general obligation bonds. The bonds will be offered for sale by underwriter Raymond James and Associates this week. They're anticipating this to happen on Wednesday. Updated information will be provided to commission with final proposed terms and bonds prior to the commission meeting on August the 19th. The second reading of this ordinance is scheduled for August 19th, which coincides with the consideration of the bids on the refunding bonds. These bonds are revenue refunding bonds, which will refinance the 2011 A bonds and will provide a net present value savings of approximately $1.7 million. We don't know what those actual savings are until we actually issue those bonds this week, so that number could change. The fiscal note is this does not incur any direct cost to the city, as the cost of issuance are built into the bond issue itself, so that we don't have any out-of-pocket at this time. Staff has 4 options on this action. You can pass on first reading ordinance number 1911011, authorizing the issuance and delivery of approximately $11.85 million of principal amount water and sewer revenue refunding bonds. Pass on first reading, but give staff direction of any amendments prior to the second reading on August 19th. Postpone action to a specific date and time which will delay the sale of the refunding bonds, or do not pass the ordinance which may eliminate the city's ability to refinance the bonds and recognize the significant savings. Staff recommends option number 1.
Just for sake of complete disclosure, is there ever a situation in which a city would choose to not do this?
If for some reason the market was very volatile and we went to sell those bonds and we weren't going to recognize that savings, we have no obligation to sell them. We could choose not to, but what I'm hearing from both the underwriter and our advisors is the market is very volatile now, but those numbers are tending to go down and not up. So they're anticipating that our savings could be a little bit higher than what we have now, but there could be that possibility.
Similar to what Ms. Pack described, in past experience have had instances where there's savings to be had, but there's an anticipation the market's going to get even better, and you might want to wait on those savings. I don't think that's the case here. These rates are pretty favorable.
When these are callable, are they only callable within a certain time frame? Or are they callable at any time after?
I think they're callable anytime after, from that time until they're
until they're
matured.
matured? Were these originally 20-year bonds then?
Yes,
Because our new maturity is still 2031, so
Yes.
we're just, okay.
yes. We're not extending the term, we're just calling
Exactly.
those.
That's why I want
yeah.
to make sure. We're just refinance them to that
Yes.
term. How many of our bonds that we sell are callable, or that we do? And why would they all not be callable?
I think they all have some feature of callability, but a lot of it depends on what there's a certain period of time before they're callable, and that, I think that time frame could change, but I think most of them are callable.
For a bond buyer to have interest, to have it be immediately callable, it doesn't. I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on. It may not be enticing to a bond buyer to buy bonds that are immediately callable, so a lot of times there's a call date set somewhere out in the future. And then you may recall, the first time we talked about refinancing these was in advance of the call date. We're going to escrow the funds and have it available when the call date came, but federal tax laws changed and you actually had to wait till the call date. So we started down this path last year and had to pause because of the new IRS regulations till the call date actually arrived and matured.
Does bond counsel notify us, or do we have a chart that shows when these become callable? Because with today's rate environment, it might be advantageous, if
I've
we
asked
have.
that question. This is all the way that we can find that are callable at the
Okay.
moment.
Right, and our financial advisor does keep a strong eye on those things for us, and we ask him to do that periodically throughout the years. Hey, look at our bonds again, make sure nothing makes sense at this point. We did do a refinancing back in 2016 that we refunded a bunch of older bonds, and so that was the last time we actually did a GO bond refunding.
Given the current market condition, if we didn't have that new IRS regulation, it might actually make sense to refinance in advance of being callable, but that's no longer an option.
Any questions, comments from the public? Okay, bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Mayor, I move we pass on first reading ordinance number 19-11011, authorizing the issuance and delivery of approximately $11,850,000 principal amount of water and sewage system revenue refundable bonds, Series 2019-B.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to pass on first reading ordinance 19-11011. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 7.5.
Item 7.5, consider bids for the 9th Street tree replacement parking lot landscaping, project number 90001C.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Yeah, this project is for replacing trees that we did remove on the 9th Street project. We did remove 30 of them. Some of them felt like we're in pretty bad shape. Worked with the city forester to do that. Did not know that, sounds like there was a few that might have been historic markers, so that's something to consider that we heard today. So that 100-year-old trees are definitely, we can do a little more investigation on that, I guess, because that's an interesting idea. We're usually looking for, this curb, where it pushes the curb up or causes sidewalk problems or street problems, and so we're a little narrow-sighted on that maybe. So if they're a historic tree, then maybe we can do something else. So we'll try to look at that in the future. However, we did at least commit to replacing all these 30 trees. And it does seem like only 7 are going to go back on 9th Street. And so to preface that a little bit, we did send out 130 letters to every property owner on 9th Street to try and see if anybody would like a tree. And City Forester Brett Lamer did a good job of calling people. He called everyone basically. So anybody he could get a number for from Water Customer Accounting. After the deadline, he heard from 4 immediately, and I was able to get most of the 7 right there, right on the first day they get the letter. But then he didn't hear from many people after that. So he contacted them afterwards, and still was not able to really convince a lot of people to take a tree. So that's where it's at. We don't have a lot of people on 9th Street that are interested in trees, but have a few at least. And surprisingly, I did look at the list, and there's a few who didn't lose a tree, but they're getting one anyway. So it's good. It's going to go back on 9th Street that way. So we're happy with that. But yeah, they actually didn't even lose a tree. They're just taking one. So that was the goal, to try to get as many as we could on 9th Street, and we ended up with 7. Landscape Consultants is a contractor here in Salina, does a lot of landscaping around the community. Helped us plant trees last year, is currently planting trees downtown on the project. Lots of experience with trees, so they'll work with our guys to get the trees planted in the right spots that the people want, and then put the rest of them where we can. Is Brett Lamer here today? He's not. Okay, we can talk to him more about where to put trees, but he's definitely our city forester, and he's been most involved with this. We bid the project, and Parks is going to be mostly responsible for executing it. They'll the parking lot is the other aspect of this. The 5th Street parking lot over by the new KU building. It's definitely got some weeds over there, so we've tried to manage that this summer, but it did get completed last winter, and took us a while to get kind of a plan figured out and get the actual dirt in place in the spring to have plants. And so it's taken a while to get the plants kind of what we want there from our Parks Department, but best kind of when to plant them is really coming up here pretty soon, actually. So fall's a good time to plant those and get that kind of finalized. So that will be about 10 islands over there, and it'll make that parking lot look pretty good. So we only did have one bidder, so I had to explain that as well, just kind of talk about, we're wondering why we only get one bidder. And so we did a lot of calling other bidders, 12 landscapers that we were able to get a hold of, or that we at least sent the plans to. And we did, I think, have one other person pick up plans, but they weren't interested. And so it seems like they need a reminder. So it's what we learned. They need a reminder. You got an email. There's a project coming up. That was the excuse we got. Came and passed. It was interesting, the excuses you got. So they're obviously pretty busy. The landscapers are, but maybe didn't need the work. But they said they were interested in bidding the work if we do it again. So I guess hopefully the next time we may have more than one bidder. That's the goal. So I would, I guess our project is for $29,000 approximately, with a contingency funded from our gas and sales tax budget for kind of parking lots. We have a parking lot line item in there, and federal fund exchange dollars as well for this project, for the 9th Street project particularly to fund that portion. So I would stand for questions.
Just for clarity, folks, this is basic, this is really for almost 30 trees,
It is.
not just the 7 trees on.
Right. Yep. The 7 will go back on that street.
Ninth
We'll get
Street.
23 to plant elsewhere.
Does the city help the homeowner with the upkeep of the tree the first several months to make sure it gets ordered?
don't
Do you
believe
get
so.
instructions or?
Well, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, they're trees are guaranteed for a year, which is helpful. Landscapes guarantees them for a year, so that's usually. I don't know if they do gator bags or anything on that, but it's most of the time they're planted in the fall. Fall is a really good time to plant trees. They, if they don't survive the winter, then they have to replant them in the spring. But yeah, typically that's the best time. If you plant them in the spring or the summer, you do have to water the heck out of them to make them grow. But in this case, it's the best, one of the better times to plant trees is in the late fall after the first frost. So as far as maintenance goes, that's on the property owner, and that is something that Brett has to work with them on. And a lot of these properties just don't want that maintenance. They're happy to have the tree gone. It was a mess before, hard on them, so they don't want any more.
And the reason, I'm sorry, the reason the property owners are asked is because we're not putting the trees back in the right of way, correct?
Correct.
They're going back between
Yeah, there's
the
a-
right of way and their, back in
Yeah,
their
the-
yard.
Brett has kind of our city forester has kind of an area that a tree has its best chance of success in a certain amount of right-of-way, basically. And if there's just not that much room out there, which Ninth Street's, there's some areas of Ninth Street that we're in right now that we're able to keep a lot of trees, and it's pretty good size, so you can make a tree grow in there, but most of the time, the tree ends up going back on private property.
I take it we asked for the bid before we assess the need for the trees?
Dan, you might speak to the Tree City USA commitment to replace some trees one for one.
One for one, you're right.
So,
Yeah, that's the goal, is if we remove any trees, we replace as many as we removed. Just may not be in the same spot, but they have to go back in the city somewhere. What was your question, though?
That, I mean, you only needed 7, but you
Oh,
asked for
no,
30.
we have to buy 30 if we want to be a Tree City USA. So, yeah, only 7 were wanted on that project, but our parks guys can usually find spots for trees in town, so that's why we maintain our one-for-one tree replacement policy.
Question. All right, thank you. Any questions, comments from the public?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is John Blanchard. I live at 250 South 9th Street, directly impacted by the loss of these street trees. So I just have a few things that I would like to make suggestion-wise, and primarily to staff. And I appreciate Dan's work on this, but street trees are really not a forestry problem and an engineering problem. They're a community development project problem. And I think, Ms. Driscoll, as a planner, I think you would agree with me that street trees add value to properties, reduce crime rates, reduce maintenance costs in shaded versus non-shaded areas. Let me go through my list here. Provide aesthetics and increase investment in core-type neighborhoods that have those trees, those street trees. One big thing is they contribute to pedestrian safety. They are real, true traffic calming devices. You spoke about, Mr. Stack spoke about the city forester saying, let's don't put them in the right-of-way, let's put them on the other side of the property line. Well, every study will show you, and every design guideline of complete streets or anything otherwise will show you that that does nothing to provide pedestrian safety. Those trees need to be a buffer between the street and the sidewalk in order to be effective traffic calming devices and provide a measure of pedestrian safety in there. I think that when we talk about greenfield versus infill and redevelopment, we talk about tools that add value to our core neighborhoods. I think when we take trees out on that type of project, we ought to have a street tree ordinance that is similar to our business landscaping ordinance that says if we take out 30 trees, we don't necessarily need to put back 30 trees, because in the time that that street was designed, there have been trees that have died and trees that have been added. Some of them in good places, some of them in not so good places. Some of them species that are ideal to streetscapes and some of them that are not. I think we need to come up with a comprehensive street tree plan that not only picks out the right species, the right sizes and spacing, and the right location for those trees. I think that those are the types of investment in our core neighborhoods that we can make. It takes me 7 minutes to walk from my house to Iron and Santa Fe. If I have to walk that, as I do now, where I hit areas of shade, it's a pleasant walk. If I have to hit that, and I'm hoping to God that landlords don't own the properties in between there, because none of them want street trees, okay? It's going to be a hot, uncomfortable walk, and I'm kind of probably not willing to do that. So if we really want to invest in our down core neighborhoods, I think we really need to commit to a street tree ordinance that says we're going to do what's best for the urban forest environment and hit those things like 15% reduction in violent crimes when the canopy is increased 10%, 14% less property crime when the tree canopy is increased 10%, 10% property value increases when you have street trees in front of your properties, about a 7% property value increase when your neighbor has trees on their property as part of a tree canopy. When we did the North Salina Community Development Group, we had a grant, we had a planning group come in from Florida. One of the first things that they said is one of your first steps you need to do is you need to create a tree canopy infill project. And that study is available for anybody that wants to see it. These trees, I think, add enough property value, crime reduction value. Now, incidentally, all of these things that I'm talking to you about, you guys already know about because you had a study session on March 18th of this year telling you all about this. In fact, one of the most glaring reasons why I think we need to be proactive and not just let the homeowner decide who, or the property owner decide who and where a tree goes, is the cost of maintenance. And I invite you guys to all go back there, but just on one thing, phase one, the areas that large shade trees, the cost of that reconstruction was $70,000. The non-shaded areas in phase one were $168,000. Nearly $100,000 more and way over double more. So there is real cost savings that we can have in areas that are shaded. So I ask you to look at potentially setting aside some money. Let's get, if it's, maybe you don't need 30 trees, maybe you need 45 to make it right. Maybe you only need 15. But let's get that right rather than saying, and I applaud staff for calling people and saying, do you want a tree? But we need to be more proactive than that. I think we need to say, we need to invest in our core neighborhoods. And so as a resident down there that's taken a chance and somebody that would like to frequent downtown businesses because I can walk there and don't have to drive, I would ask that you help me and my fellow residents there have a more enjoyable and safe environment. And I thank you for your time. And I will just make this offer as a person that's been in planning and landscape architecture for 30 years. If you'd like to sit down sometime and work out what a nice street tree ordinance might look like, I tried to work with Jason Gage for about 5 years on it and got nowhere. I would be more than happy to donate my time and expertise to some sort of plan in that regard. So letting you know that, Mayor and commissioners and staff know that as well. So I think you have my phone number. So thank you very much.
Mr. Stank, just, again, just part of disclosure. Do you have the list, or just from your memory, some of the major criteria that were used for selecting which trees were to be removed? I think
Which
I know some of
trees,
them.
where?
On 9th Street, or on any street, actually, that are deemed to be in the public interest to remove
To
them.
remove?
Yeah. And I'm not putting you on the spot. If not, we can ask the
Don't,
city
I can kind of,
forester to update us on that.
yeah, silver maples and ash. I'm looking at some of the ones that were removed. Seems like those are fairly common. Silver maples end up being a problem because they are, I'd say hollow, but they seem like they're hollow by the time they serve their useful life, and a lot of the branches go down. So I know those are a problem for forestry and property owners in general. The ash sometimes have the ash borer, so they're a disease. So that seems to be the ones I'm seeing here. American elm, is that the elm? That's not, I don't know, that's not Dutch elm disease. There's an elm disease out there as well. So I'm speaking out of my league, so I will sit down. But yeah, the
see if we
forester
can get it
into
up.
that a little more. Thank you.
We'll
Any
we'll
other
get a follow-up
questions?
on that in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there were some that were just because of the size, they've damaged the sidewalk, they've damaged the curb. They had been trimmed and they weren't healthy. They were older trees that have lived their useful life. And those were the first ones, regardless of the type of tree, that were removed, the ones that were causing damage. And then, like Dan said, there were oaks and different trees, hardy trees, that we tried to save. If they weren't doing damage, we tried to leave them in the right of way.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Commissioners, Todd Welsh, 300 South 9th. I would say if you said I was coming here today to talk about trees, I would have told you were all crazy. But based on my good friend John Blanchard, I just couldn't let it go because I reside a business at 300 South 9th and am being impacted by the exact same thing. John lives a couple houses down from my commercial building. We have no trees in the right of way. And again, wasn't really going to speak until he said that he thought that trees should go back in the right of way, because I'm the biggest guy saying that I think it's the craziest thing that trees are in the right of way. Number one, for pulling out of the driveways, 98% of the people have to back out of their driveways to get onto 9th Street, and those trees, when they get that big, are just deterrent. I think it's a terrible thing. Obviously, Mr. Blanchard has never received orange X's on sidewalks before of properties that he owns. 90% of those orange X's are made by the city of Salina when a tree between the right-of-way cracks or heaves the sidewalk that's inside there, and the owner gets to pay for that. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't go down a path that says we're going to make some sort of ordinance that says that we're going to tell people where they have to put a tree on their property, and it has to be in the right-of-way. Now, we may be able to say, okay, we're part of the tree organization that says here are the trees that the city pays for, and I think we already have that in our comp plan of the trees that we recommend to put on our parks and the ones that we'll reimburse. I think at some sort in time, we gave them money back for doing that. As far as house value, I've been in the real estate business for 25, 26 years. I've never had anybody come to me and say, I would have bought this house if that tree was on the other side of the sidewalk. So I think it's interesting that, and I'm sure there is somebody you can pay anybody to come up with a study that said something was, I believe I quote, 17% more in home value if I had a tree and 20% more if my neighbor had a tree in the right of way. Crazy. I'm not saying it's not in print somewhere, because I think he goes and finds all the stuff that's in print, and I agree with that. The biggest one that got me, though, is that the crime rate. I can't imagine there's a guy going by who says, I'd rob that house if the tree were on the other side of the sidewalk and not there. I just don't understand where some of that stuff comes from, that it could do that. Now, I could see that the barrier, and again, and I could get a guy to write any story I wanted
Mr.
to.
Blanchard?
So I'm just saying that I just don't want to see this commission, based on one gentleman coming up and talking, to say that we're going to go tell people on 9th Street or any project that we do that they must put a tree that we select, and we're going to tell them where to put it on their property of their rights. So, thank you.
Just for clarity, just, our action today is just to pay for the trees we are putting in, not to address where future trees are going.
He had a shot.
30 seconds.
cited the crime rates. I just want everybody, because there were chuckles back here from some of my former commissioners. The crime statistics, all the property value statistics, all the statistics I quoted earlier were in a study session that you guys had on March 18th, 2019, in that room right over there. I didn't make up any of those. I didn't even read those anywhere other than in your study session material. So I don't appreciate the fact that you guys supposedly know that and let somebody who has an agenda other than the public good come in and make comments that are completely false. And I would ask that it be read into the record that Mr. Welsh's comments were incorrect and that you guys didn't correct him, but that's the case. And I'll sit down now because you got more important things to do.
Citizens.
But I don't think this is a venue for citizens to come out
30 seconds.
and rage on other citizens. It's really not appropriate.
The opportunity to speak here is to give an opinion. We're not making a declaration of whether what you say is fact or not.
Right, but you sat there and let a citizen, instead of address you, berate a fellow citizen, and that's really inappropriate. And I would hope that next time that happens, that you cut that short, especially since the information that was shared on my part was stuff that was presented to you from your professional staff. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? All right, bring it back to the Commission for Action.
Mayor Davis, I move we award the project to Landscape Consultants LLC of New Cambria, Kansas, in the amount of $29,616.88 with a $2,283.12 or an 8% construction contingency.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to award the tree project to Landscape Consultants in the amount of $29,616.88 with an 8% contingency. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And I think there's a second page here because all of you had said nothing yet today, so I'm assuming you're here for something else. Okay. 7.6.
Item 7.6, resolution number 19-7723, accepting a conditional grant award for the Emergency Solutions Grant Fiscal Fund Year 2019 from the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation to benefit local recipient agencies and authorize the mayor and city staff to sign the related grant documents for allocation of grant funds to 3 Salina agencies.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This one ought to be pretty easy. Not asking for money. We're asking for approval to accept a grant. So that's just money coming our way, hopefully. This request is for approval to accept the 2019 Emergency Solutions Grant Award from Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, affectionately known as KHRC, and direct staff to execute the required documents. The ESG is the Emergency Grant, Solutions Grant. It is a HUD grant, so HUD has the money, HUD gives it to the state gives it to the local jurisdictions, and jurisdictions appropriate that money to local agencies that help citizens. This grant's been ongoing for at least 20 or more years. I couldn't dig back enough information, but it's been at least that long, and certainly has benefited hundreds of citizens in Salina. The commission directed on May 6th for staff to submit the application. We submitted it on May the 10th. The conditional grant award letter was received on August 5th, 2019, and the deadline to submit all related grant documents to KHRC is August 16th. So it's a short timeline there. It's a conditional grant award until they receive all signed documents. The total grant award is $130,740, which represents about 66% of the requested amount of $199,200. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation determines the grant allocation. They specifically determine who gets what. And for 2019, Ashby House has a total of $22,800. DVAC, $62,250. Catholic Charities, $42,250. And then there's an administration reimbursement for $3,440. The city of Salina keeps that money. And grant funds for this particular HUD grant are specific. They are to be used in 5 areas. Street outreach, none of that money was requested this year, so it's not that these agencies don't do street outreach, they just chose not to request ESG funds for that. And street outreach is going out literally onto the street and getting in contact with homeless and making sure they know what's available to assist them. The other category is emergency shelter, pretty obvious what that one is. DVAC has a shelter, Ashby House has a shelter. Homeless prevention, when a family or an individual is at risk of homelessness and there's a specific definition, then homeless prevention funds can be used to keep them from becoming homeless. Rapid rehousing is once somebody is homeless or living in a shelter, rapid rehousing can help them get into permanent, hopefully stable, long-term housing. And then the HMIS is just short for the management system. There is a master database that all agencies except for domestic violence shelters are required to use this master database and enter all their data. There's a match with this grant, and it is provided by the agencies. The City of Salina does not come up with any of the match. And the City of Salina administers this grant with significant participation by the local agencies. They are actively involved in the administration of the grant with expectations for a lot of paperwork to be submitted on a quarterly basis. There's no fiscal impact to the city's budget. We are basically a pass-through entity for these funds. We keep all the records. We answer all the questions that Kansas Housing would have of us. We make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Commission action today, we've identified 4 options. To approve Resolution 197723, accepting the conditional grant award. Approve Resolution 197723 with amendments as the City Commission deems appropriate. Option 3 and 4 would be to postpone Option 3, to deny Option 4. If you choose Option 3 or 4, then we wouldn't be able to participate in the grant this year. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
I'm surprised you gave us 4 options. But, any questions or comments from the public?
I might add that we do recommend option number 1.
Number 1, okay. All right, bring it back to the commission for action.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 197723, accepting the conditional grant award in the amount of $130,740 for the 2019 Emergency Solutions Grant from the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation to benefit Ashby House, Salina Catholic Charities, and DVAC, and authorize the mayor and city staff to sign the related grant documents for submittal by the August 16th, 2019 deadline.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 19-7723. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. 7.7.
Item 7.7, resolution number 19-7725, authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement by and between the City of Salina and the Salina Unified School District Number 305 relating to the School Resource Officer Program.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The School Resource Officer Program has been in existence since 1997. It's been a very successful program between the City of Salina and Unified School District 305. The agreement before you would allow for 3 uniformed officers to be assigned to the school, with the district having the option to allow for a 4th officer should staffing levels at the police department become acceptable to do so. This agreement, like I said, has been in existence since 1997. One of the major changes to this agreement this year, and thank you to Mr. Bankston for working on this, is we are proposing that this agreement becomes self-renewing on an annual basis as opposed to having to bring it before the commission every year to be renewed. There are provisions set forth in the agreement. As you saw, there's 3 different provisions that could terminate the agreement. One of those being that the either party can terminate with 30 days written notice. Under the agreement, the district would agree to pay $285.42 for each day and $142.71 for each half-day that an officer works for the district under this agreement. These are the same rates that we used in 2018-19 school year. And this agreement has been reviewed by each entity's legal counsel. And then during the summer months when school is not in session, the officers will be assigned to their regular police duties. So there are 4 recommended actions. 1, you can approve Resolution 197725. 2, you can approve the resolution with amendments as City Commission deems appropriate. You can postpone consideration of resolution to a specified date and time and provide staff direction regarding additional information or amendments the City Commission would like to request for future consideration, or you can vote to deny the resolution resulting in discontinuation of the SRO program. And obviously, we would recommend option 1.
I don't think there'd be much support for option number 4, but I'm just speaking on behalf of them. Any questions?
And this is probably more for staff than it is for Officer Forrester. If we were to make this an annual renewal, how do we calculate the fee between the city and the
There is a
school
provision
district?
within the agreement that identifies that we have to have a mutual agreement, and if we don't, then either party could notice up and wouldn't necessarily terminate the agreement, but that'd bring us back to the bargaining table in terms of price. So I think there's a presumption that we set the rate based on our cost. We share that with the school district, and if we have a meeting of the minds, we can
Is
do
that a pass-through rate based
administratively.
on salary, benefits? How do we calculate that?
I don't know that we articulated that specifically in the agreement. We just gave ourselves the discretion to set that rate and propose it to them, but
But that is the numbers that are used, is we take the officers' salaries and benefits and then average it out, and that's
Just
basically the cost per day.
Do we know how many school days there are? Just curious.
180, isn't it?
depends on who you talk to.
Used to
Not
be
enough as a
180.
parent,
Yeah,
and
not
too many as a student.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions, comments from the public? Nope. Bring it back up to the commission for action.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve resolution number 19-7725, authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement by and between the city of Salina and the Salina Unified School District 305 relating to the school resource officer program.
Second?
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 19-7725. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 7.8.
Item 7.8, consider bids for project number 70021, the construction of a regional law enforcement training center to be located at 3770 Yost Drive in South Salina.
Chief Nelson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today regarding this project. I realize this is a rather lengthy blue sheet. It's 8 pages long, but I felt it was extremely important to document the 5 years of work that has occurred to get us to where we are today. We are on the cusp of awarding a contract for the construction of this facility. I do not intend to read this blue sheet verbatim unless you wish me to. I'm seeing some notes. I would like to just provide you a summary. I do not think anyone here questions the need for new range, as many, if not all of you, have toured the existing facility that we have right now on State Street. I prepared a proposal to have the needs assessment completed for the site in March of 2014 with then City Manager Jason Gage, and he approved this request. Brinkley Sargent Architects out of Texas were subsequently awarded a contract for this needs assessment in 2015. In November of 2015, this assessment was completed, and the results were a surprise to no one. This assessment described our facility as inadequate and severely limited in providing both the amount and quality of training that is required of a modern training police agency. The recommendation for the construction of a new training center and range utilizing the same footprint for the new facility that had been in use for some 40 years. They truly felt we could leave it there, the range, because one had been there for 40 years, and logically that made sense to me. This project was first found on the 2016-2020 Capital Improvements Program as an unfunded project. In January of 2017, Commissioners approved the 2017-2021 CIP, which included $400,000 for an architectural and engineering design for a new facility. In June of 2017, Commissioners authorized the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Police Facility Design Group of Kansas City, Missouri for the design of a new training center. This firm has exclusively designed public safety buildings since 1978. I would like to mention that both James Estes, principal of the Police Facility Design Group, and Matt Beeson, to his right, the architect for this project, are in attendance, and they will certainly be available for any questions. In December of 2017, a development review team meeting revealed serious concerns regarding construction of a new training center and range at our present location, as was previously recommended by Brinkley Sargent Architects. The primary concerns were methane gas concerns, as this site was a former landfill, and water and sewer extensions that would be required were estimated to cost to me an astounding $600,000. As a result, we began looking for a new location. A shovel-ready property was located on Yost Drive, was quickly identified as a potential site in February of 2018. After a DRT review approved our conditional use permit to construct the facility on Yost Drive, a resolution was drafted to purchase this property, and it was to be considered by you at the May 21st, 2018 commission meeting. However, this resolution was not heard by you as a result of a proposal made by a citizen to purchase a partially completed indoor range on West North Street. For approximately 10 months, there was extensive staff and designer effort to facilitate consideration of purchasing this range facility. Ultimately, you decided that it was not in the city's long-term best interest to acquire either the partially completed range structure or to purchase adjoining property to build a new facility. With that said, we went back to the Yost Drive property, and in March of this year, you approved the purchase of this Yost Drive property with the original price of $130,000 still intact. It should be noted that this property was appraised at $245,000, and we purchased it for $130,000. On June 24th of this year, requests for bids were advertised. On July 16th of this year, 5 bids were received, with 1 bid being below the construction budget and 4, unfortunately, were above the budget. As you know, the low bidder, Cheney Construction of Manhattan, requested to formally withdraw their bid the following day due to what they called a tabulation error. This request was ultimately approved by the commission. The second lowest base bid was received by Compton Construction of Wichita, but as a result of the bid alternates, Trinium Incorporated of Manhattan could also be the lowest bidder, depending on which alternates were accepted. We held post-bid interviews with representatives from both Compton Construction and Trinium. In addition, the Police Facility Design Group further vetted the 2 firms, including reference checks of their superintendents that would be on site for this project. Police Facility Design Group reported no concerns with either company regarding their ability to complete this project. Both contractors indicated a willingness to work with the city to try and reduce the overall cost of this project. In consultation with the city's legal counsel, it has been determined that the most appropriate manner to pursue possible additional cost savings while preserving the integrity of the sealed bid procurement process is through change orders to be negotiated and approved after the contract is awarded and entered into with a chosen bidder. Staff has identified several options for your consideration today. This includes the lowest cost option, which would award the contract to Trinium Inc. in the amount of $4,840,600, and this is accepting 4 alternatives, which would be removed or revised flooring, removal of site fencing, remove 1 garage bay, revised entry ceiling, and this carries a $242,000 and some change, 5% construction contingency. The second option is where the 3rd bay remains and the other items are removed, as in option number 1. This would cost $4,904,400, and this carries a $245,000 and some change contingency cost also. The third option you have today is the base bid, or it's called the full cost option. This is to approve the award of the contract to the Compton Construction in the amount of $4,998,000, accepting no alternates, with a $249,900 construction contingency. This is what we originally asked for. At times we call it the full mill deal, but this is what we previously had requested. The fourth option is to approve the award of the contract with alternates as the City Commission deems appropriate. The fifth option is to postpone consideration of the contract to a specified date and time and provide staff direction regarding additional information or amendments the City Commission would like to request for future consideration. The sixth option is to decline the award of the contract and provide further direction. Staff recommends option number 3, which is a base bid awarding the contract to Compton Construction in the amount of $4,998,000, accepting no alternates with a, again, $249,900 5% construction contingency. And this, we spent a lot of time looking at these options, but the primary reason for this recommendation is due to the annual cost difference between the lowest cost option and the base bid option, which is number 3, is nominal relative to the benefits of a full facility build-out. When I say nominal, I know it's money, I understand that, but the difference is an extra $13,000 per year is what it would cost for $13,000 per year. I would like to defer any questions regarding the fiscal notes of this project to Finance Director Debbie Pack. She has agreed to answer these. However, if you'd like, I can read them, but that's a lot of reading of numbers. One thing that's not on the blue sheet, but I think it's quite relevant. During this time that we spent working toward this, I've certainly reached out to a lot of different law enforcement agencies, asking them, would you be interested in training at our facility? Not for free, but for a nominal cost. I reached out to several chiefs and sheriffs, and the ones I would like to speak about was the Saline County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Roger Solden is in the back here. He's been supportive of the project from day one. He's indicated his strong desire for this project and his desire to conduct extensive training at this facility if built. And also, and this is pretty impressive, on his own initiative, his department has made a donation towards our judgment simulator for this facility. In addition, the following agencies have said that they will train at our facility, again, for a nominal fee: McPherson County Sheriff's Department, McPherson PD, Cloud County Sheriff's Department, Concordia PD, Mitchell County Sheriff's Department, and the Beloit Police Department. They've all indicated a desire to train at this facility. With that said, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Gentlemen.
I'm ready to put this behind us. I'm ready to, I think we've kicked this dead horse enough. And it's, my only concern was that, months ago back when we said that we would do the 4.5 million, and that wasn't including the $400,000 that it would, take, or,
The architectural engineering,
fee.
correct.
I said it 100 times, I think we need this. We need it bad.
I concur.
Still, though, my recommendation is, number 1. And the reason is hopefully that they won't use that $242,000 contingency. I still think we're getting everything, that you need. But I would like to see, us try to save as much as we can with what we can do.
Commissioner Ryan.
Oh, I just wanted to ask staff that why alternates 1 and 8, what part of the code? I mean, I guess I don't understand why you have to have an underground irrigation system. Does the fire department have one of those, or Kenwood Cove, or, I mean, this is out on a highway. Am I not working there?
The code just requires that you are able to demonstrate the ability to maintain the required landscaping. So theoretically, you could have a hose bib and commit manpower to drag the hose around and maintain the landscaping. But practically what we see is more often than not that doesn't happen, and the landscaping dies and you're back into a replacement cycle. So I think that's number 8. Number 1, the trash enclosure is a code requirement that it need to be enclosed. We looked at a couple of things in that regard. The design of that particular trash enclosure matched the exterior construction of the building. We talked a little bit about storing that dumpster inside the building, but again, if you think of a 3-yard dumpster like you see at a commercial location, just didn't think it was practical that staff would push that in and out on a weekly basis versus leave it sit there in contradiction to the code. I think we do have, the blue sheet speaks a little bit to our ability to talk with the selected contractor once they're chosen about possible change orders. A trash enclosure might be a good example. The only alternate we had was no trash enclosure whatsoever. We might have an opportunity to talk about a wood paneled fence type trash enclosure at considerable savings, but that's not going to close these budget gaps. I think We've had some conversations about, do we have opportunities for change orders after the contract's awarded? I think we do, but I don't want to lead you to believe that there's enough there to close that gap. So I don't know if that answered your question.
That's
but
fine. Thank you very much. And thank you for mentioning the other facilities that, and organizations that want to use it, because I got the impression it was going to be exclusive, and I wasn't very comfortable with that. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Couple things. One, I know I'd mentioned earlier, is there a chance that this will be open at times to the public?
You've asked that before, and I'm going to give you a
I
better.
still don't know if I've gotten the
You're right.
answer.
I'm going to give you a better answer.
Okay.
I've definitely looked that up, and there are agencies in the United States that open it up one day a month. Basically, we have our personnel out there. There is some waivers being signed and such, but we're out there overseeing what they're doing. So I would certainly entertain such a similar theme as 1 week in a month where the citizens could shoot out there.
Well, one, I think there's some revenue potential. But two, I also, as we discussed earlier with the new conceal and carry laws, I think as many individuals that I do believe are carrying, I think the more that they're able to use their firearm, the safer they are. And so I think from a community standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, from a revenue standpoint, and also from a safety standpoint, that we seriously look at doing that.
Yes, sir.
The second thing is this thing continues to grow, and I'd like to send it back, and I'm sure there's some cost savings when we look at the material we're using on the building, but I'm afraid we'd eat half of that up in design fees again, and I'm not sure we'd get where we want to be. So the flooring, on the alternate, what's the difference in the flooring? I guess that's one that I just had a question about.
Good evening. This is Matt Wiesen from Police Facility Design Group. The difference in the flooring is the original specified flooring is a porcelain tile. So it's a hard tile with solid grout joints. It's the most durable floor you can put in this building besides just going with concrete. Going to a luxury vinyl tile, if you think of it kind of like a VCT tile, but it's got a thicker wear layer. It's a tile type floor, but it does have joints in it. And so the benefit of the porcelain tile, when you're thinking of dealing with a firing range, is you do have lead particulate and gunpowder. So we prefer to go with a solid monolithic floor instead of having something with joints in it. But it is a durable flooring. It's most commonly being put in hospitals right now. So schools have always done VCT flooring, and hospitals have as well. But now they're moving to this more durable flooring, so that's why we present it as a value engineering option.
And the fencing, if we remove that, that's something that could always be added later, obviously, correct?
Correct.
James Estes with Police Facility Design Group. I do want to clarify one point, is we are responsible at no additional cost to work with the department to keep the project within the budget. So we have been working and will continue to work at no charge as we manipulate those elements that we can reduce the cost with. Our fee is set for advancing the project. So until the contract gets in place and we're actually starting construction, our fees have kind of been on a hold. So everything we look at where we can save money, we're going to continue to try to do that, and there's no counter fees on the other side of the ledger that our design fee will cost this to save a little bit of money. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I'm not sure who to ask, probably the architect or the police chief. I noticed a door was not eliminated, but it was reduced in size. What can no longer go through that door when it's made smaller?
That actually wasn't included, because that's actually an addition and not a subtraction as far as to go from a bigger door to a smaller door. That's why that wasn't included or accepted as an alternate. The purpose of a 9-foot door, which we definitely prefer, is so we can get our armored personnel carrier onto the range for some really good training. Dismounting an APC, there's really an art to that, using it as protection. It's all something we have to train at, and if we don't have a 9-foot door, we won't be able to get the APC onto the actual range. And like I said, going from a 9-foot door to a 6-foot? Going to a 6-foot door, it doesn't save us money, and we can't get the APC anymore. That's why it wasn't listed as an alternate that we accepted.
So in the recommended bid, because the numbers and the names are beginning to confuse me, but in the bid that you would recommend, the bigger doors there?
Correct.
All right.
Correct. In all three options, the doors are the same.
Okay, and I guess the same question would apply to the third,
The bay.
thank you, third bay door.
Well, the third bay is very near and dear to my heart. I really would have preferred to ask for 4 bays, but I didn't want to be greedy. I asked for 3 bays because honestly, if we go down to 2 bays, we will be full the day we open up the facility. We already have 4 vehicles that will need to be parked in there that presently are parked throughout the city, are parked outside, are parked at station number 2. And I'm talking about the APC, the Armored Personnel Carrier. The Mustang, it's in storage downtown on 5th Street. We have what's a white utility van that we use on SWAT events. And then lastly, we have a very large evidence RV. It looks like it is an RV, but it's an evidence unit that we pull out on major scenes. So if we were to lose a bay, and if we're planning for the future, that's not what's going to happen, because we'll be full from day one. And on a side note, we've needed a trailer for as long as I've been here for our motorcycles, because sometimes we travel too far where it's not practical to have a motorcycle. So I was kind of counting on that extra space, if that's what you want to refer to it as, for things like that we intend to purchase in the future.
I guess my concern was at the amount that we're going to be spending, I wouldn't want to build it to just barely hold what we have now. I mean, and I don't know what other technology or equipment's going to be in vogue 5 years from now, but if there's no option on additional entry and exit,
Right.
it just...
If I could add to that, excuse me, Mayor, I'm sorry, the bay is $64,000. That's what we're saving if we cut a bay, $64,000. Again, I'm not making light of that, but that's the total savings if we change from option 3 to option 1 as far as the cost of the bay, $64,000.
Do we know what the inflation rate has been since we first, over the last 18 months? I'm guessing that 64,000 would have been covered.
Since 2015.
Since 2015, yeah. So we probably spent more than that 64,000 with our delays. I just want the building to be, I'd rather build space we don't need right now than have to figure out how to add on to the building 5 years from now. And I'm not sure which 2 options have the difference. I thought I had it squared away last night. But right at this moment,
I could tell you really quickly if you like. The option 1, which is the lowest cost, takes into account the flooring, different flooring, removes all site fencing, removes the 3rd garage bay, and has a revived ceiling. And if you want to know more about the revised ceiling, I'm going to have to defer. The second option, which the 3rd garage bay remains intact, it's the same except for we don't lose the 3rd bay. So we lose the floor, we change the flooring, remove all the fencing, and we do a revised ceiling. The third and final option is the base bid, where none of the alternates are removed. We keep the bay, we keep the flooring, we keep the fencing, we keep the 3rd car bay, I already said, I'm sorry, and we keep the ceiling as originally planned. Those are the 3 options.
Okay, so the difference between number 2 and number 3, I guess, is?
The difference in cost?
94,000?
Well, I have 101,000, but it's right at $100,000, the difference between option 2 and option 3.
Over 20 years?
Yes.
5,000 a year?
Plus interest, but.
6,000 a year?
Yeah, page 6 of the staff report is a table trying to provide that comparison of those 3 options.
Okay, so base bid full cost is everything in without removing. On page 6 or 7?
Kind of towards the bottom of page 6 is the
Yeah,
table I
page
was referring-
6, right. So that would be the third of those three options.
Correct.
Okay. So the difference per year,
Yeah, the
7,000.
second column from the right, that annual debt service requirement difference would be that annual $63,000 above original budget for the base bid, $56,000 for that middle option without the garage bay, and $50,000 for the low-cost option. So
Well, I'm thinking with the improved training and techniques, they'll probably save 7,000 in supplies or expenses somewhere along the way. Because, we're not just buying a building, we're buying training. And I don't know how you put a value on the training, but, training results in, fewer citizens' complaints, I'm hoping, more efficient use of time and fewer professional accidents. For that little bit of money a year, I just don't see a reason to not build it. I mean, it's like, buying a Porsche and trying to run it on regular gas, just.
that's why we provided that level of
Yeah,
detail.
that's just a
and
very
where the
little- I mean-
recommendations coming from.
When you look at the decisions we're making for large amounts of money, that 7,000 is an infinitesimally small amount for the value we're getting. Because we probably aren't building another one of these for the next, 70 years? Well, certainly no one in this room will see the next one built, but, or use, I shouldn't say see, they won't use it, but, we should, in my opinion, we should be building the Cadillac of training facilities around here. We shouldn't be trying to save money because we're Salina. We ought to be building the best building because we are Salina. So I just don't see saving 7,000 and reducing the functionality of the building as being pound-wise.
I would tell you,
my opinion,
staff
but-
struggled mightily to crunch the numbers, provide you the information, and come to a recommendation. But we tried to be sure to provide you enough information that you could objectively assess that, as well as then take that into consideration as part of our recommendation.
Right, and I agree, if you had to delay something, we can always find a fence on sale somewhere. But, but, the core building itself, it's a functional piece of equipment, the building itself. So I don't think we should scrimp on that. Not for the minimal savings we're going to have. That's one opinion of 4. Any other questions?
questions.
Want to open this up to the public? I'm hoping somebody from the left-hand side comes up.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to address this council.
I'm sorry, could you give your name to the clerk, probably?
I'm sorry?
Name it.
I'm coming to that, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Excuse me, Mayor. My name is Joel Weimer. With my immediate family, I operate C&W Ranch in Saline and Ottawa counties. I'm privileged to serve on the Salina Police Department Excellence Fund Board and the Saline County Law Enforcement Advisory Council. Because of my military experience, Chief Nelson asked me to address your council on the value of training, something that you just asked about. I served on the reconnaissance team as a recon scout in the Marine Corps in the late 60s and early 70s. As an airborne Special Forces Marine, I learned the value of difficult training the hard way. My recon Marine brothers and I trained tirelessly and endlessly, not to do the all-important job of protecting our local citizenry, but to follow our instincts in feeling that we were protecting our nation's freedoms. We should all realize that training at any level is all important. Please allow me to diverge temporarily from training and the proposed training center for just a moment. Most of us recognize the value in spending tax dollars on building renovations, downtown beautification, sports venues, river projects, the arts, all to the positive advantage of our citizenry. However, in my mind, if we don't have a properly trained force in the proper training facility and the proper equipment to serve and protect the citizenry, all these other positives and positive advantages for our citizens become meaningless. In preparing to address this body, I reached out to Chief Nelson to help me encapsulate in my mind the training efforts, most of which I was already familiar with, that our police officers go through annually to prepare, to protect, and serve our citizenry. There is a long list of training requirements, regiments, and tactics that our officers follow annually, currently with the worst of training facilities. These include, but are not limited to, pressure point training to gain hand-to-hand compliance, crisis negotiation, utilization of tasers and mace, bodyguard restraint systems, hazardous material situation handling, SWAT team training, canine training, active shooter training, and the list goes on and on. It should be obvious that all of these require very specialized training, and it absolutely requires a specialized place to accomplish this training, such as the proposed Excellent Training Center. This training and the training center are not only necessary to protect and serve our citizenry as desired, but to protect the safety of our officers in doing their job. I was almost a casualty to the lack of adherence to training protocol as a young Marine. The last thing we want is for our officers to be subjugated to that possibility while making their absolute best attempt to protect our citizenry and our community. I ask that this council join me enthusiastically in full support of this proposed training center for the safety of our citizenry and its protectorates. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Well,
Lucy Lars.
County Commissioner, former, and City Commissioner, and Mayor.
I'm just a peon. I'm just a peon. Lucy Larson, 214 East Key, Salina. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I really know you've got some heavy decisions to make every day, every week, every month, and nobody appreciates it more than me. But since this project began, literally feels like hours after Chief Nelson arrived in Salina, it kind of opened up everybody's eyes, whether you were a commissioner or whether you were just a peon, a citizen of Salina. And a lot of people were shocked at what we had and what we could have. So fast forward not only 5 years, but to what's happening in our community. We've got so many wheels in motion right now with some of the things that Mr. Weimer alluded to. We're going to be pulling in so many great people into Salina, whether they are coming to live or whether they are coming to be entertained or whether they are coming to be educated. And so when you have all these entities coming together, what should be at the very, very top of everybody's minds would be our safety. And in today's society, you realize how important that is. Why would we not deserve that? Why we're going to have the cream of the cream, so let's have the cream of the crop to move us forward into the next generations to come. I can almost assure you that your grandchildren will one day, maybe, be trained to be these protectors. And you can sit back then and say, and I had a hand in it in 2019 when I could see into the future. Wish we all had that magic ball, but we don't. But I could see into the future and realize that we deserve that Cadillac. And as I don't mean to sound petty either. Chief Nelson mentioned that several times too. You don't want to say it's only money, but just rip that Band-Aid off, take that leap of faith, jump in, feet first, head first, I started to say, dive in, jump in. You know that every day that goes by, the dollars go up. So don't stall any longer. Just rip off that Band-Aid. Let's go with your gut feeling. Hopefully there'll be room to grow if you, whatever decision, whichever option you take, as the mayor mentioned, we don't have to fill all the spots now, knowing that if we build it, they will come. And they will come. We know it. We're all adults. We've been here. We're residents of Salina, and we've been here, all of us have been here for a long time. That's all I wanted to say, except that, and this is a true story, I have the opportunity of helping with Vacation Bible School at my local church, and you get to meet these little bodies. And they idolize people in uniform. And whether they have them in their family, whether they have law enforcement officers in their family or not, I think they just idolize them and respect them because I think they feel that they are the protectors of everybody. And I think that's such a great role model to have. So while I'm in Vacation Bible School, I get to meet all these little kids while we have some free time and you're visiting. And I have the 5-year-olds. And they're getting ready to go into kindergarten. So I asked that question that you ask all the little kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this little boy kept wearing superhero shirts and tennis shoes and whatever. So I asked him one day who his favorite superhero was. And he told me his favorite superhero is Batman. And so I said, so who do you want to be when you grow up? And I just knew he was going to say Batman. And he said, I want to be a cop. And I said, you want to be a cop? Well, I think that's great, but why don't you want to be Batman? And he goes, well, because I would look silly dressed like this. And I want to get in a car that goes as fast as Batman's. And so I understood what he was, and I know his family, and his parents are not in law enforcement. So, you know, we're starting with 5-year-olds. I think that was a great little answer that he said. And of course, this is near and dear to my heart. I have family that's been in law enforcement, killed in the line of duty in law enforcement, and currently are in law enforcement. So we just deserve that Cadillac. And please, rip that Band-Aid right now. It'll hurt for a second, but in 5 years, you'll look back and you won't even remember when you pulled off that Band-Aid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn Peterson, 2052 Leland Way. Mayor, Commissioners, I came a while back, I was going to look up the date, and it really doesn't matter, but we came to speak about this, and I was excited. It was approved, and here we are, months later, still going through the same thing. And I'm a person who always wants to bring, if you remember, I talked about buying a dress that didn't fit and how much money you spend. And I'm a person that does those analogies. I've been thinking about that, how I was going to address you, but something happened to me this weekend that took that clear out of my mind. It was an analogy. It's a real story. My husband and I had gone out to eat. We were going down Highland to come home, ready to make the turn onto to Wayne Street, and there were some kids over playing there, adult children, and they had their trunks up. Just as we went by, this one gentleman reaches into the trunk and turns around and points at us. I had no way of knowing if that was a real gun, if it wasn't a gun. I went quickly. My husband says, go around the block. I said, no, I'm not going back. So I'm thinking, what should I do? I met an officer on the street, coming down the street. So I'm flashing my lights. I'm trying to get his attention because I'm thinking, this isn't right. Finally, he stopped, and I went up to his car and explained to him what had happened. I was frightened. I don't know his response. I don't know how he felt. I hope he knows and knew how to handle that situation. I don't like being confronted like that. I don't want these officers to have to worry about what to do in those situations. It's life-threatening, can be. I hope that they're trained. I hope they have a place to train adequately for that. Things are too close to home. You look what happened in El Paso, Texas. We don't want that in Salina, Kansas. It's even closer in Springfield, Missouri. We don't need that in Salina, Kansas. So please dig deep, as Lucy said, tear off the Band-Aid. Give us what we deserve to train these folks to prevent those kind of things and know how to handle them when they come to Salina. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Byron Norris. I live at 521 Pine Ridge Drive. I, like Mr. Weimer, Carolyn Peterson, and Lucy, am a member of the, an honor to be a member of the Salina Police Excellence Fund. And I know that Chief Nelson has put long, hard hours into coming with his recommendations to the commission. I know the commissioners have as well. My comment to you is extremely brief. I think we find ourselves today, and you've been at the current facility, and you know how lacking it is. And I think that decision has been deferred far too long. And I'm looking to the commission today to make that change and make this decision, which will bring us up into the 21st century to make this a top-notch facility. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ron Stiles. I live at 2366 Hillside. Started my law enforcement career with the Salina Police Department in February 1968 and retired in March 2011. When I started, our firearms training was conducted at one of the old city dumps that was located where the Muni Golf Course is now located. And our targets were bottles and cans. Fast forward 51 years to this day, firearms training is still conducted at an old city dump. But instead of shooting cans and bottles, we've evolved to paper targets. So in 51 years, not much has changed except for the location. With all that's transpiring around the nation, police training should be paramount. We're not talking about watering the grass, but public safety. I'm at a loss as to why a training facility has not been approved when it meets the needs of the Salina Police Department. A training facility is truly needed where systems can be incorporated that will permit the use of different scenarios to be utilized and conducted safely. The city of Salina is very fortunate to have the quality police department that it has. It will benefit the city and the department if the facility is approved. If approved, the move will move the city and the department forward and away from a city dump. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Darrell Wilson. I live at 613 Oakdale Drive in Salina, Kansas. I'm a retired Salina police officer. Worked for the Salina Police Department 22 years, retired as assistant chief. Then became sheriff of Saline County. Was the sheriff for 12 years and retired again. My son is glad I'm retiring. He's tired of going to retirement parties. We built a jail, as you may remember, at the police department, or the sheriff's office, and went through a lot of the things that you're going through now, and I certainly understand the problems that you're looking at and so on. Also, I was there as a police officer when the new city police department was built, and it went on low bid, and we certainly got what we paid for. When we just started moving into the building, I was not in the high ranks at the time. The doors wouldn't close because the ceilings were warped and so on. It was the low bid, of course. Later on in years, when we kind of consolidated some of the things going on between the sheriff's office and the police department, we used part of the police department as our juvenile detention center, and so the kids pushed on the back wall and it fell outside. So that was what you get with low bid sometimes. At any rate, I think this is a great project, a great opportunity, and I appreciate your consideration for building it on the best bid that you can get for what the money you're going to spend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mike Marshall. I'm a retired police officer.
I spent 31 and a half years on the police department, and I, like Ron Stiles, was training out at the dump and didn't have very adequate facilities. And I'm going to echo what everybody else said. I'm not going to go into a lot because I was here like some of the others were and spoke last time. But I just encourage you, it's very much needed because of the environment now, what's happening around the country. You really need to get a top-notch training facility for your police department. And we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, John Blanchard, 250 South 9th Street. I want to take a moment here to show some appreciation for all four of you here and Commissioner Hodges, who's not here. I know that we share the same feelings, that your most solemn responsibility to the citizens is their safety. And that is a heavy responsibility, and I know that you guys bear that responsibility, and I appreciate it. Also, I know that the concern of our first responders, whether they're the fire department, and in this particular case, the police department, I know that's a very sincere and solemn concern on your part as well. I don't think you can serve in the office that you're serving and not have those as your two main concerns. And so I just want to say to you that I appreciate the fact that we are where we are now, and without analyzing what plan is better and flooring is better and everything, I know that your judgment is from a public safety and from the police department personnel safety, and I really sincerely appreciate that. And I'll just close with this. We always hear from a public safety perspective that when second count, the police are only minutes away. And that's not a knock on them. It's they can only do within they're human, and we can only get to a certain place in a certain time. But once they do arrive, we are asking these folks to make split-second decisions that are the difference between life and death. And that's not just from our citizens, but we're asking the people that protect us to do that. I know you probably feel like I do. Even now that I'm out of office, when I hear a siren go, my heart starts to race a little bit because I'm concerned about the safety of who's responding there. And I see you nodding. I know you know what I feel. And so I want to just say thank you because I know you guys are going to do the right thing. And I thank you for thinking about the public safety of our old and young citizens. But right now in particular, we need the best quality training for our first responders so that their wives, husbands, and children and their families can know that they have the best opportunity to arrive home safely after work. So thank you very much for your work on this, and thank you to the chief as well.
Thank you.
Mayor Davis, Commissioners, Todd Welsh, 300 South 9th. And, wow, I thought I was prepared, but after hearing Joel speak, phenomenal job. And what Lucy says, I echo that. And in many more gentlemen behind me who have served many years in law enforcement who would have much more than that. In full disclosure, I helped select the site where this new training facility would go to. But as I was getting to know Chief and talking about what his vision was, it was exciting as being a citizen to know that would probably come to fruition given the fact of what they've been training at for the last 50 years. One thing I thought about as I was going through this process is, colleges, including even Kansas Wesleyan, they upgrade their training facilities for recruitment, for people to come on campus, look at it, and make a decision to go there. I can only imagine that somebody wants to enter into this profession. They don't do it for the money. They truly wouldn't. I think there's a culture that's built, And I think that by us moving this forward, it shows the people who want to choose this career that if they want to choose it and protect the citizens and they've grown up in Salina, that this is the facility and the community stands behind them and this is a place that they can be proud of. No different than most people are proud of the other facilities that they put in place. No different than the hospital is, who puts things in place for recruit other doctors and for people to be want to participate in the community and the healthcare system we have here versus going anywhere else. So, again, I know that they're always advertising for new police officers, and it couldn't be tough to do that. But I think this is something that would help create a culture inside the community that would make them step forward and say, well, this community really cares. So I'm in support of it, and I'd hope that you would look at it and, as Lucy said, tear the Band-Aid off and give them what they've really worked for. And the last thing in closing, I would say, we could easily say, well, let's postpone this, downsize it, let's take a look at it again. But you know as well as I do, it would be 3 to 6 months back in Kansas City. It would be 3 to 4 months back out in bid letting. And what we have today, if you could downsize it, and it's still going to be $4.6 million, and it'll be a smaller facility than what you're looking at today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, bring it back to the commissioners for action.
I do have a couple comments. I appreciate everyone's comments, and I had a lot of these written down before everyone came up to speak, and a couple of my comments, and I'll go from what I consider to be least important to most important. And one is this facility should have been built 10 or 20 years ago, and after touring it, we all know that, and if we'd have done part of it 10, 20 years ago, we'd have half the debt paid for, and what we'd be doing is just adding to it. So we've lived, 50 years with the facility that we've had, which really isn't a facility. It's like you said, it's almost like when we all grew up shooting cans out on the farm. I am happy to hear that we have other law enforcement agencies that are wanting to use the facility. I think that'll help us also service some of that debt, perhaps. The other thing I had was recruitment that I had written down. Again, we're always looking for quality people, and I think if you show them you have a quality training center, I think that'll help draw quality recruits to our community. One thing we haven't talked about is lawsuits. I mean, if we're not training our staff properly, and in a split decision, someone makes a wrong decision, and even with training, it could still happen. The cost of this facility will look minimal to what we could be up against. Our society isn't what it used to be. I know Carolyn made a comment about someone pulling a gun out of a trunk. Our police departments, our law enforcement agencies are dealing with something different every day. And if we can get them in a simulator, we can get them used to doing some things differently. I think will help them deal with some of those. Hopefully we don't have those happen in our community, but the way things are going, you just wonder when that time might happen. The final thing is, and I think it's been said several times, is we owe the officers the training necessary that they will return safely home to their families every night. A lot of us in the jobs when we go to work, our spouses know that we're going to be returning home safely, and when you look at law enforcement, it's not always a guarantee. So I know we sit up here and we try to decide, do we need to put a fence around the facility or do we not? And again, that doesn't help with the training, but we do need the training facility. I think that's why we're here. And I think part of the reason we were delayed is, as we talked about, we had another facility we looked at, and we owed it to the taxpayers to see if we couldn't get them get the law enforcement a facility at a less cost. And we weren't able to do that. And this is a facility in the location that works for us, and I think we need to move forward.
Mr. Mayor, if you're ready, I'm ready to pull a Band-Aid. I make a motion that we approve bid number 3, base bid full cost option, approve the award of the contract to Compton Construction of Wichita, Kansas in the amount of $4,998,000, accepting no alternates with a $249,900 5% construction contingency.
Second.
Moved and seconded to, and I'll make sure I say this correctly, to approve should this be referred to as base bid full cost option? Is that identified sufficiently?
Yeah, I think the more important thing is Compton Construction.
Okay, true. Okay, with improving the award to Compton Construction of Wichita in the amount of $4,998,000, accepting no alternates with a $249,900 construction contingency. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Puts new meaning to the life government moves slowly, but we move carefully. Thank all who've helped and reworked this. Any development business? Any other business?
I have one thing, since we have a room full of police officers. It's been brought to my attention and driving it. I know with the new angled parking, I believe the speed limit on Iron Street in that, just on both the block north or east and west of Santa Fe is still 30, and I don't know if that's something we might want to look at.
We can certainly take a look at it. I don't know if there's a recommended speed.
We've actually
relative to
talked about
angled
that
parking.
and think that it should be lowered as well.
Okay.
We just haven't made a formal proposal yet.
Okay. It just seems to me like when I look down, I was, just doing 30, but.
Because of the sight distance, the Fifth Street still has a signal, Seventh Street doesn't now, and the anticipation of more pedestrians downtown and mid-block crosswalks, that we think Iron should probably be lowered. It's
Because
just a
Santa
matter of
Fe's
its.
Santa Fe's 20,
Santa
correct?
Fe's 20.
Yeah, I
and
think
it's a
Iron
matter of
should
it's
be
20 or
okay.
25. But
I wanted to mention in my riding around on my bike, out on Pacific Street, there's a place labeled Kenny's Auto Body that has literally thousands of cars. Is there anything that can be done about that? Is that just private property? But it seems to me most, I would characterize it as a junkyard, have at least fencing around them.
That property straddles the city limits line, so our ability and our authority is somewhat limited. I know we have looked at that property occasionally in light of what's in the city limits and what we can enforce, but we can take another look.
And I wanted to mention to my fellow commissioners here, since I'll miss the study session next Monday, unfortunately, and I think that I had noted to staff that I would miss that, but I see that it's going to be included, the conversation about the assessment financing options for the Wheatland and Magnolia Hills. I just wanted to be on record as saying that I think that Markley is an arterial street, that it's as much a busy street as Ohio Street is, and so I would favor the city taking as much responsibility for the construction of that street as possible. I think in a city manager's report, we got to report back that in the various options, the city might take on 95% of the responsibility, and 5 would be assessed to the I believe that meant the next 2 phases of Magnolia Hills, as well as the west side of the street in Benefit District portioning. So I just want to let my commissioners know where I stand on that portion. And on Holmes Road, I think what Bond Council's proposed seems reasonable, but I wanted to share my thoughts on that.
If I could jump in there, the way we left that last study session was, give me any questions that you have, and I'll forward those on to bond counsel, who happens to plan to attend for the bond refinancing anyway. So Gina Rieckhoff will be available at that study session. And anything you can forward to me in advance will give her an opportunity to be prepared. That's the one question I've received so far. That's why I shared that result with you in my city manager's update, and then plan to address that in greater detail in the study session.
That traffic count that was shared with us, that was a daily traffic count?
Yes, and that was just total traffic on Markley. It didn't break out sources.
And how old is that traffic count, do you know?
last year.
Last year, okay.
Chair, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
See you next week. Thank you. Do I need to get Pam to talk to Howie? Little came out. Yes, I'm sorry.